The morning she realized I was missing, I wasn't there to see it, obviously, but I can imagine it perfectly, because Lorna has always been dramatic when she isn't getting attention. I bet she stormed from room to room, slamming doors, calling my name like I was hiding behind the curtains as some kind of joke. Meanwhile, I was sitting on a bus 3 states away, eating a smashed granola bar and wondering why my hands wouldn't stop shaking. But that's the end of the story. Let me start at the moment everything snapped. It wasn't a discovery. It wasn't catching her with someone. It wasn't even a fight. It was a sound. A stupid, tiny sound that rewired my entire life in a single second. We were in the kitchen. She was scrolling on her phone, leaning against the counter, pretending to listen to me talk about the dumb leak under the sink. I wasn't even asking for help. I just wanted acknowledgement that I existed. And while I was mid-sentence, she let out this exhale. Sharp. Annoyed. Like every word I spoke was a mosquito buzzing near her ear. I froze. She didn't. She just kept scrolling. And I don't know why. God, I wish I knew why. But something inside me just shattered. Not because of the sigh itself, but because I realized I had become background noise in my own marriage. A placeholder. A technicality. Something she'd long stopped seeing but kept around because replacing it required effort. I remember staring at her profile, her bored expression, her slightly parted lips, that tiny wrinkle between her eyebrows she gets when she's thinking about something she shouldn't. And for the first time, I didn't see my wife. I saw someone who was already gone. Someone who had left emotionally months before I even noticed. So I did something completely uncharacteristic for me. Ruben, the quiet one, the apologizer, the guy who double-checks locks and triple-checks texts. I walked to the bedroom. I opened our closet. And I started packing. Not angrily. Not fast. Not dramatically. Just packing. One shirt at a time. One pair of jeans. My childhood photo album because she never cared about it anyway. My spare glasses. My toothbrush, but not the electric one because she bought that, and I didn't want to owe her anything. It was weirdly calm. Peaceful. My heart wasn't even racing. It was like my body had been waiting months for my brain to catch up. And here's the part that nobody believes. She didn't notice I was gone until the next morning. Not when the closet door was left open. Not when the charger was missing from my side of the bed. Not even when I didn't say goodnight. She went to sleep without checking. Without caring. And the next morning, the next morning, is when everything flipped. That's when she panicked. That's when the regret began. That's when the calls started. 36 missed ones in 3 hours. I watched my phone light up from a cheap motel dresser while I sat on the floor and wondered whether I should feel proud or heartbroken. Probably both. Because leaving wasn't revenge. Leaving was survival. By noon, she had called my brother, my old boss, and even that barista from the coffee shop I used to visit before work. I didn't hear this from her, of course. I heard it from Milo, my brother, who texted me. What the hell is going on with Lorna? She just asked if I thought you'd run off with someone. That part actually made me laugh. She thought I had someone else. Me? The guy who used to rearrange my entire day just to bring her sushi during her lunch break? The guy who once waited in the rain for 2 hours because she forgot our anniversary dinner? The guy who hasn't even looked another woman in the eye since 2014? No, I didn't run to anyone. I just finally stopped running from myself. But Lorna couldn't process that. Couldn't admit she'd crossed some invisible line that no apology could erase. So she made up a version of the story where I was the unstable one. The runaway. The betrayer. The man who cracked under the weight of a normal marriage. And God, she was so convincing, so good, that people started calling me asking if I was okay. If I was having a breakdown. If I needed help. I didn't answer any of them. I couldn't. Because if I heard even one voice from the old life, I knew I'd collapse and crawl right back. I was still in that tiny cabin. No internet. Just spotty reception and a creak that never shut up. I watched squirrels. I listened to wind. I cried into cheap pillows. But I didn't go back. She left 22 voicemails that week. They started cold. Are you serious right now? This is childish. You better be at your mother's. Then they turned worried. Please call me. Ruben, where are you? This isn't funny anymore. And finally, they got desperate. I'll fix it. I messed up. Just tell me what to do. But even then, even in her tears, I could hear it. She didn't understand why I left. She thought it was about one thing. One fight. One moment. But it wasn't. It was everything. It was the years of being talked over. The silent birthdays. The way she only touched me when she needed something. The fact that she couldn't tell the difference between affection and obligation anymore. And I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I confront her? Why didn't I give her the closure she was sobbing for? Because I did. Over and over again. Every time I said, I miss you, and she responded with a distracted hum. Every time I tried to talk, and she reached for her phone instead of my hand. Every time I looked her in the eyes, and she stared past me like I was a lampshade. Lorna didn't lose me that morning I left. She lost me long before that. She just hadn't noticed yet. But now she was starting to. And the regret was eating her alive. I wasn't planning to find out what Lorna was doing. Honestly, I didn't want to know. I had already disappeared from her life like a ghost, and part of me wanted to believe she'd just go on pretending I never mattered, because at least that would have made it easier to keep hating her. But then, 3 weeks after I left, her best friend called me. And that changed everything. It wasn't a direct call. It was a FaceTime request that I declined immediately. But then the text came. I know you don't want to hear from anyone, but I think you should know what she's doing. She's not okay. I stared at those words for a long time. Not okay? What did that even mean? She was the one who rolled her eyes every time I tried to talk about my feelings. She was the one who said, Ruben, not everything has to be so emotional. Now suddenly she had feelings? And I was supposed to rush back and rescue her from the burning building she lit herself? I didn't answer. Not that day. But 2 nights later, I caved. I called the friend, Darla. We weren't close. She always took Lorna's side in arguments and once called me a bit too sensitive for her taste. But this time, her voice was different. She sounded tired, like she'd been watching a train wreck from the front row. She's unraveling, Darla said flat. She's not eating. She's barely sleeping. She's been calling your old coworkers, your gym, even your ex-girlfriend from college. She found your high school art teacher on Facebook and messaged her asking if you ever mentioned a favorite hiding spot growing up. I didn't say anything. My chest felt like it was filling with cement. She doesn't know what to do with herself, Darla added quietly. I think she didn't realize she could actually lose you. And now she's scared she did. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that Lorna didn't lose me like a misplaced set of keys. She pushed me out. With every insult, every sigh, every cold shoulder. This wasn't some tragic accident. It was sabotage, and she lit the fuse herself. But I didn't say any of that. I just asked, is she still seeing him? There was a long pause. Too long. And then, the truth. No. She cut him off. I think she thought it would win you back. That made me laugh, bitter and hollow. Because what Lorna never understood, what people like her never understand, is that cheating isn't just the sex or the lying. It's the betrayal of being emotionally replaceable. It's the quiet moment when you realize the person you loved is capable of looking you in the eye while texting someone else under the table. She's trying, Darla said. I'm not saying it fixes anything, but I figured you should know. I thanked her and hung up. And for the first time since I left, I didn't feel relief or victory. I felt haunted. Because despite everything, despite the betrayal and the silence and the heartbreak, a part of me still remembered the version of her that used to cry at cheesy movies and fall asleep on my shoulder before the credits rolled. But that version didn't exist anymore, and I wasn't sure I wanted her to find me. The knock at the door didn't come at night like in movies. It was morning, barely past 7. I was halfway through burning oatmeal in a dented pot when it happened. 3 slow knocks. Confident. Unrushed. The kind of knock that says I already know you're in there. And for a second, I thought maybe it was just the owner of the cabin dropping by unannounced, or some neighbor complaining about noise I hadn't made. But when I opened the door and saw her, standing there in jeans too clean for a dirt road and eyes swollen from crying, I swear I forgot how to breathe. Lorna, after a month of silence, after everything I did to disappear, after all the missed calls, the ignored texts, the sheer distance, she found me. I didn't say anything. I just stared. She didn't say anything either. Then, after a long beat, she lifted her hand, and she was holding something. An old, beat-up shoebox. I recognized it instantly. It used to live in the back of my closet, behind a pile of winter coats. She must have found it while tearing the house apart looking for clues. And I hated that she brought it. It was full of drawings, mine. Sketches I did when I still believed in myself. When art was more than a coping mechanism. There were letters too. Notes I wrote her when we first started dating. She used to keep them taped to the mirror. I thought she threw them out years ago. "Can I come in?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I stepped aside like a coward. I shouldn't have, but my legs moved before I could stop them. And suddenly, she was inside the last place on earth I wanted her to be. She didn't sit down, just stood in the center of the room like she didn't belong in her own story anymore. I waited for the monologue, the confession, the tearful apology, but what I got was worse. "I brought your box," she said, setting it down on the table. "You left it. And I read some of it. I know I shouldn't have, but it's the only way I could remember who you were." "Who we were?" I didn't respond. She took a deep breath and started pacing. "I know you hate me. I know what I did. I know I lied and I pushed and I made you feel small. But Reuben," her voice cracked, "I didn't know how far gone you were. I didn't know I'd already lost you before you even walked out the door." Still, I said nothing. Because what was I supposed to say? That her words fixed something? That I was touched? She drove 7 hours to bring me a shoebox full of ghosts? That it mattered now after months, years of erosion? She finally stopped pacing and turned to face me, eyes desperate. "Say something." But all I could do was whisper, "Why now?" Her face crumbled. "Because I couldn't breathe without you. And I didn't even realize how much until the silence swallowed everything." That line stuck. Not because it was poetic, but because I knew exactly what she meant. I had felt that same suffocating silence. I just learned how to live inside it. She started crying then. Not soft, movie-style tears. Ugly, gut-wrenching sobs that twisted her whole body. And for the briefest, most dangerous moment, I wanted to reach for her. But I didn't. Because even now, watching her fall apart, I didn't trust that it wasn't just regret she was mourning. Maybe it wasn't me she missed. Maybe it was the version of herself she could no longer get back. We sat in silence for a long time after her breakdown. The kind of silence where even the floorboards seem afraid to creak. She tried to pull herself together, but it was like watching someone try to sweep up shattered glass with their bare hands. Every word she tried to say came out wrong, or broken, or too late. "I'm not here to ask you to come home," she finally said, her voice hoarse. "I know I don't get to have that." I didn't believe her. Because Lorna never did anything without a goal. She didn't drive all this way just to cry in a cabin and give me a box of dusty memories. There was something she wanted. There had to be, and I was too tired to play detective again. "I'm here because I need you to know I've changed," she added, as if that phrase hadn't already been burned into the script of every guilty person on earth. I cut contact with Kellen. I told my mother everything. I even started seeing a therapist. "Congratulations," I muttered, not looking at her. She flinched at that, and for a second I felt something almost like guilt. But then I remembered all the nights I lay awake while she giggled over texts from someone else. I remembered the time I found her receipts from a hotel she said was for a team retreat when she'd been with him. I remembered what it felt like to be invisible in my own home. "You always wanted me to open up," she said after a while. "So here it is. I was scared. I was selfish. And I used you. I took all your kindness and your stability and your loyalty and treated it like wallpaper, something I assumed would always be there. But when you left, the house fell apart." There it was. The metaphor. The one line that probably sounded really good in her head. The one she'd rehearsed on the drive. I wanted to feel something when she said it, but I was empty. Numb. Like her words were trying to knock on a door I had already bolted shut from the inside. "You don't get it," I said finally. "It wasn't about the cheating. It wasn't even about Kellen. It was about the 100 tiny ways you erased me, every day. The eye rolls. The dismissive laughs. The fact that you talked to him like you used to talk to me. Do you know how pathetic I felt sitting across from you at dinner while you stared through me like I was a chair?" She didn't answer. Because she knew. She just didn't want to admit it out loud. "I'm not the man I used to be," I said, and for once, my voice didn't crack. "I'm not the guy who would have begged you to stop. I'm not the one who would have fought for scraps. That man died the day you stopped seeing him." "I know," she whispered, and it hit harder than I expected. Because she did know. And still, I couldn't tell if this was remorse or just another performance. Another desperate act to rewrite a story that had already ended in the quietest way possible, with me walking out, and her not noticing until the silence got too loud to ignore. She stayed another 10 minutes. Asked if she could leave the shoebox. I nodded. She wiped her face, stood up, and walked to the door like she was carrying a 100-pound ghost on her back. Before she stepped out, she turned to me one last time. "I'm sorry, Reuben. Not for losing you. For making you feel like you were never there in the first place. Then she left, and I sat there, staring at that stupid box like it was a crime scene. I didn't chase her, because I still didn't know what hurt more, her betrayal, or the fact that part of me still wanted her to come back anyway. After she left, I didn't touch the shoebox for days. I kept it on the far corner of the table, like it was radioactive. Every time I glanced at it, I felt something squirm in my chest, something ugly, bitter, almost childish. It wasn't nostalgia. It wasn't love. It was a kind of mourning for a version of myself that I couldn't unkill. I didn't leave because I wanted to hurt her. I left because I finally realized I couldn't survive one more night pretending I was okay. Pretending her silence didn't feel like a punishment. Pretending her emotional withdrawal wasn't choking me one slow inch at a time. Lorna never screamed at me. She never hit me. Never threw anything. But she found more effective ways to tear someone apart, like reducing me to a roommate, an errand boy, a shadow. And when someone treats you like you don't matter for long enough, you start believing it. That's the part she never understood. That's the damage you can't see. I remember once, we were sitting on the back porch. She was drinking wine. I was trying to talk about my mom's health. And she just got up mid-sentence, said, "I forgot to water the plants," and walked away. That's the kind of thing that doesn't make it into fights. But it stays. It builds. It leaves you wondering why you're still talking when no one is listening. And now, after all that, she shows up with tears and a shoebox and a rehearsed apology? What do I even do with that? I finally opened it. Late one night, after too many hours of pretending I could ignore it. Inside were the drawings I did when we first started dating. Messy sketches of her curled up on the couch, of us at the lake, of her asleep in my hoodie. And there were notes too. Old ones she had written me. Stupid things like, "Don't forget to smile today," and "Your brain is so sexy, it should be illegal." I hated how much they still hurt. I hated that she'd kept them. And more than anything, I hated that I wanted to believe her. That part of me was still trying to measure her sincerity like it could be weighed on a scale. Like pain could be converted into points, and if she said just the right combination of words, the score would somehow balance. But it doesn't work that way. Real damage isn't theatrical. It doesn't come in one big, explosive betrayal. It comes quietly, day after day, like erosion. Like a leak you ignore until the ceiling caves in. And now here I was, alone in a cabin, staring at the wreckage of a marriage I didn't even know had died until I was already mourning it. She texted once. Just once after she left. "I don't expect anything. I just needed to say it to your face. I'm sorry." I didn't respond. Not because I was trying to punish her, but because I wasn't sure whether forgiveness was something she truly wanted, or just a way to shift the weight she could no longer carry. And I wasn't going to be her unloading dock anymore. I didn't expect a package, especially not one with her handwriting on it. It arrived without warning, no return address, no note, just my name scribbled across the front like a dare. The cabin's landlord texted me that something had come for me. I thought it might be from my brother, or a mistake. But when I saw the writing, I knew. Lorna. I stared at it for a long time. Didn't open it that night. Or the next. I left it on the windowsill, watching it collect condensation from the cold glass. And the truth is, I was afraid. Not of what was inside, but of what it might mean if I let myself care. But on the fourth night, I cracked. I sat down at the little wooden table, my hands already shaking before I touched the seal. The box wasn't heavy, but whatever was inside had weight. The first thing I pulled out was a photo. Us. 5 years ago. At a gas station of all places. She was eating sunflower seeds, barefoot in the passenger seat, hair tied up in a mess, flipping me off with a big, stupid grin. I had taken the picture because she looked so free. So, unguarded. We weren't rich. We weren't successful. But we were in love, or at least something very close to it. Back then, I think she still saw me. There were more photos. A playlist CD. A paper napkin with my terrible doodle of her face from a road trip, one she used to keep in her wallet. And at the very bottom, folded with almost surgical precision, was a letter. She'd written it by hand, front and back. Not a text, not an email. A real, physical thing that looked like she'd rewritten it a dozen times. I read it once, then twice. And then I hated her again for making it so hard to stay gone. She didn't beg. She didn't try to spin the past. She just laid herself open. She talked about how her father used to disappear emotionally and how she never realized she had started doing the same. She admitted to the cheating, called it what it was, cowardice, a distraction. A pathetic attempt to feel wanted without having to confront why she stopped loving herself. But the line that gutted me was this: I didn't replace you with him. I replaced the version of me you once loved. And I think I've been trying to find her again ever since you left. She ended it with something simple. I don't want to trap you. I just want you to know I remember everything. And I'm sorry I made you feel invisible in a life you built for both of us. I didn't cry when I read it, but I shook, because for the first time since I left, I felt something I wasn't prepared for. Doubt. Not forgiveness. Not healing. Just that small, traitorous thought. What if? What if she meant it? What if she had changed? What if all this pain actually carved out space for something better? But here's the thing about leaving in silence. You don't get to come back with noise. If I returned now, I'd be dragging every broken version of myself with me. And what would we even be rebuilding? A house of guilt? Still, I couldn't sleep that night. I couldn't stop seeing her face from that photo, flipping me off with sunflower seeds in her teeth. And for the first time since I disappeared, I didn't feel angry. I felt tired. So tired of carrying a silence, so heavy it was starting to sound like a scream. I stayed up until sunrise the day after I read her letter. Not thinking, not pacing, just sitting, breathing, letting the weight of everything settle without trying to fight it for once. The anger had dulled. The grief, too. What remained was something softer, something closer to sadness than rage. That morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I drew her, not from a photo, not from memory, just from feeling. It wasn't perfect. Her eyes came out too wide, her mouth too careful. But when I looked at it, I saw a version of her I hadn't allowed myself to admit still existed. The one who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen and whisper dumb jokes into my neck. The one who wrote notes on the bathroom mirror in eyeliner. The one who once loved me so loudly the world felt quieter because of it. Maybe she wasn't gone. Maybe she was just buried. And maybe I had buried myself too. I didn't call right away. I took another day, walked down to the river, talked out loud to no one, said every ugly thing I'd wanted to say to her for months. Then I sat on a boulder and imagined the version of myself who had left that house. The one who carried pain like armor. The one who thought silence was strength. And then I let him go. When I finally picked up the phone, my hand trembled. I didn't even know what I was going to say until I heard her voice on the other end. She didn't speak right away, just a small gasp, like she didn't believe it was really happening. "Hi," I said, my voice barely there. She cried, quietly, the way people do when they know speaking too soon might shatter everything. I didn't promise anything. I didn't say I was coming home. I didn't say I forgave her. But I said the one thing I'd been too afraid to say until now. "I see you." And she whispered back, "I never stopped seeing you. I just didn't know how to admit I went blind." We didn't fix everything overnight. That's not how this works. But we talked, really talked, about therapy, about space, about trying again, not by pretending it never happened, but by honoring the fact that it did, and deciding that maybe, if we were brave enough, we could grow something new from the ruins. 1 month later, I came back, not with flowers, not with a suitcase, but with the drawing I made. I handed it to her in silence. She held it like it was made of glass. Then she looked at me and smiled. No makeup, no performance, no mask. Just Lorna. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt home.